Good evening once again, and welcome to the ref's opinion. Sincere apologies, all my fault. I'm not terribly au fait with these kind of things, and I pressed the wrong button and had to start all over again. So sincere apologies, and apologies to Keith as well. But anyway, good evening. Welcome to the ref's opinion. This is your weekly look at the biggest refereeing decisions in the game. Each week, we break down in key incidents from matches, from controversial calls to the ones that flew under the radar. This is where we give a referee's perspective on the moments everyone's talking about. Were the officials right, or did they get it wrong? So let's dive into some of the action from last week. And Keith, welcome to you, and thank you very much again.
Pleasure.
Incidentally, for you guys out there, if you'd like to take part in the show and you'd like to send us a question or make a comment, you can certainly do so. There's a little place on the bottom right-hand side, certainly on the bottom right-hand side of my screen, and you can make your comment there or ask a question. So I'm delighted to be joined once again by former Premier League referee, former FIFA referee, former head of the PGMOL. I think by now you know the PGMOL are the guys who look after the match officials, the referees, in other words, in the Premier League and in the Championship. Now I have a bit of a croaky throat that Keith had last week, so now over to me now. And anyway, let's get on. Keith, really what's getting up my nose now is this whole thing about hair pulling.
Oh,
it's just ridiculous. And I was just thinking today, hair pulling. What did they do in the 1970s when you had the likes of Stan Bowles and George Best and these guys with long hair? There was no hair pulling then. Or maybe there was and we didn't notice it. But my goodness, the slightest little thing now. I want to ask you what you think. Is it a red card offense? But we'll come to that in a minute. But why are the players doing that? I mean, you obviously don't know. Why are they getting involved pulling another player's hair? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen players with ponytails and slightly lengthy hair. I don't know the styles, but I have a real concern and a worry about this. First of all, let us make it clear that I think the message should be sent to players through the clubs, through managers and coaches, to say to the players, stop doing this. Now, the PGMOL explanation is that a red card has been issued on some occasions because there's inconsistency in this situation for what is contact with the hand with the hair. I'm being very careful here because my judgment is that they are stating that this is an act of violent conduct. Now, the line in the sand that I would draw for violent conduct is when there is a clear grab and the head of the opponent is brought backwards in a fairly violent manner. Now, on two of the red cards, it's almost like a brush contact rather than a real grab and a forceful pull. So I think that, as happens here in England, the game is covered substantially by the media, both electronic media, by newspapers, by fan groups, social media, podcasts, and everything else. And sometimes I think the quick answer is this player has been sent off for violent conduct. And I think the spokesperson at the PGMOL has not thought this through. And of course, the cat in the pigeons comes when we get an air pull that is similar to one previously where a red card has been issued, and the referee goes, "I'm not issuing a red card for that." So I haven't had the opportunity, but I promised today that what I would do is I'd really have a look at the laws of the game, because IFAB are great at sending out instructions or guidelines, and they're not part of the referee's chart. They are guidelines. And I just wonder, somewhere in the mist of all the documents that they push out, they've actually said, in simple terms, a hair pull is classed as violent conduct, red card. Now, I haven't seen that, but my view is that there are more serious challenges
Yeah.
that are creating injury to opponents, that are clearly in the realms of serious foul play. Let me remind you, the launch off the ground, 1 or 2 feet forward, completely out of control, and then the landing area is in that lower part of the leg. And the ball sometimes is in the vicinity and not in the vicinity. Again, I say you cannot use the ball as an excuse. If you take the ball and then the man, in all money terms, we used to say that's an over-the-top challenge, red card.
Yeah.
And I believe that is an area which concerns me more, where players are not being dismissed, not being red carded for acts of violence that are proper violence, and serious foul play. And there's a couple of hair pulls. I mean, one in particular that received a red card, and I'm going, give over.
Yeah.
I just, I'm very careful what I say, just in case there is. And there's plenty of referees listening to our show. So if they've seen that document, I haven't, they're active referees, I'd be interested in their view and seeing a copy or receiving from them. Although we're the experts, so-called, I think these things do get introduced without a fanfare. They're just simply like a piece of paper, an A4 sheet that's put halfway down the pile of papers that exist on a desk.
So, they'd have to define what is violent conduct. Like you said earlier, pulling of the hair that's yanked back. And even if it's not yanked back, I think some of the players are going to take advantage, and they're going to exaggerate the thing. But I have noticed in the last couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 months, there have been red cards issued for so-called hair pulling.
Yes.
Now, to what extent does it have to be pulled to make it violent conduct? I mean, the slightest.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
much hair anyway, but the
slightest. Well, I always go back to law, and I want to read, as I've done in the past, to remind everyone.
Please do. Yeah.
Violent conduct is when a player uses or attempts to use excessive force or brutality against an opponent when not challenging for the ball, or against a teammate, team official, match official, spectator, or any other person, regardless of whether contact is made. Now, is it an act of violent conduct? The PGMOL are clearly, Premier League statements have said hair pulling is violent conduct. But and therefore, if that is the instruction to their referees, then those referees at the PGMOL have got to act consistently.
And that's the issue, isn't it? Consistently.
And what we've seen is we haven't seen consistency. And I think some of those air pulls are more, there's no brutality in them. No, there's a level of stupidity.
Yeah.
More so, in my opinion, when you have had a player who has been red carded for pulling the air, and a player who must be aware of that, managers and coaches must be aware of that. Don't they get the players together and say, by the way, guys, we're outlawing from today you making any contact with the opponent's hair. Stop it now. And I think that's what they should be doing.
Do you think that's going to happen, Keith? Because they're probably encouraging it in some way, like they encourage all kinds of time wasting. And
I'm sure that tactically it's a cat and mouse game. It always has been in refereeing against players, but I think now with all the sophistication, we see the technical area and we see the bench, and in my day there was like one sub, one guy with a bucket and sponge and a half of football when I first started, and on he came, splash water all over, left the guy soaking wet, and off he went. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's fine. Now we have a dozen and one analysts sitting around, and I think it's these sort of people that are coming up with these sort of tactical approaches. One, to get the opponent sent off or to stir them and them to lose concentration. And then you've got referees who are perhaps not receiving the leadership and guidance that's required. I mean, I said it in the Liverpool Echo earlier in the week that, I would have the referees in as a group. I would discuss things like this hair pulling. And we as a group of referees would not leave that room until there was not consensus, but there was a 100% agreement that this is the category in which this particular incident is involved. You will red card these things. I would then write to the clubs and say, following a meeting of the PGMOL referees, this is the scenario where we will issue red cards for these type of incidents. Hair pulling never came into it, ever. But these are fashionable trends that come in.
Yeah.
We see the goalkeeper and going down to feign injury, knowing that he's not going to have to go off.
Yeah.
So my view in that situation is, well, a teammate goes off and he stays off for at least a minimum of 1 minute. You count that minute when the game restarts, and away you go in relation to he can only come on when the game is restarted. There's none of this, come on, you can come on after a minute. Say very clearly in the written law, create the law that says you're not allowed on until the next stoppage. So that player could be off for 3 or 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. You're then, they're playing a risk game then, the team.
Yeah.
And I think these are the things that the IFAB have to discuss, keep ahead of, and hopefully get things into kilter. But the problem for the PGMOL is quite clear. It's been to 211 territories, and technology, the television companies, is ahead of the game. We saw this week in the Liverpool v Manchester United game, where I have to say, I believed, not being clever, that the player had illegally scored the goal with the use of his hand. The ball had actually accidentally made contact with the forward of Manchester United, and the ball finished up in the back of the net.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to ask you about. Yeah. It seemed like it was a nail, at the edge of a nail.
Yeah.
And I don't know. VAR couldn't.
Look, there is no doubt here. Here we have one. The referee hasn't got a chance of seeing that. Not a chance.
Yeah.
The VAR has got to be 100% certain that there is a clear and obvious error. And I have to say, I played it 10, 11 times, and I went back to my old default position, which might be wrong. But I've always said in my career, better to have a doubtful foul in that situation than a goal that is doubtful. And therefore, that is my default position. And I would have not allowed that goal to stand.
Oh, you wouldn't? Oh.
No, because I have doubt. I think that my initial reaction is handled. The law states very clearly that you cannot score a goal with your hand and arm,
Yeah.
even if it's accidental.
Yes.
So I've just gone, I'm not giving that. Colleagues, referees that listen and write to me immediately say, that's a goal, you can't define it. Then what you get 20 minutes after is you get Sky coming up with a sort of microscope, almost like something that that you put on to enlarge it, and there you could see a change of direction in the ball. Look, it's a decision that on the day I would expect the referee and the VAR to do exactly what they did to allow the goal, even though I think, as an old fart, I think I'd rule it out. It's only then when you see afterwards the technology that's available to the television companies and not to VAR that you see it has caught the hand and it has changed the spin of the ball. But that's not available to them. So these, if you like, is where the media now are forensic in relation to the decision-making process.
Very much so.
Of the referee. Now, what I think has to take place here is that take the ones that are obvious and the less obvious ones, just move on.
See, Keith, what a lot of people and guys were phoning me during the week as well and saying, was it a handball? Was it not a handball? Did the player use his hand? And this is where they say, where's the consistency? How do we arrive at consistency on a situation like that? VAR, they looked at VAR very forensically, and they couldn't really detect. I didn't see any movement of the ball. No. Well, slight movement of the ball going forward.
No, and I think, given the technology that exists that they use, they came to the right conclusion. Even though I'm critical and I've made my point, they came to the right decision because it's easy sat in an armchair like myself making these calls.
Indeed.
They are out there. They've got to make the call. Now, here is where I smile. Because the Adidas ball that's going to be used in the World Cup and is used in UEFA, then that situation is, in that situation, what we have got is we've got the chip in the ball of the Adidas ball, and therefore they can revert back to that.
Yeah. And that's going to happen in the World Cup, is it? Have you lost me there? Can you hear? I've lost Keith there. So it looks like a lot of things are going to happen in the World Cup. I've got a couple of comments here. Brian, Don Harris says, I'm going to put you up there, Don. Gents, I know I'm splitting hairs here, but sometimes a player can touch the back of an opponent with long hair, not pulling it, but the player claims a hair pull anyway. Which player should get the yellow card? The one who feigned a hair pull or the innocent player? Good point, Don, because that's what they are doing. They're feigning injury. As soon as they get a touch, particularly players with long hair, as soon as they get a touch on the back of their neck, they're claiming their hair was pulled to get their opponent red carded. Now, that brings up a whole new, or rather opens a whole can of worms, in that players are cheats. You can call it what you like, but players are cheats, and they're cheating, and they're doing anything they can to get their opponent sent off. And this is what really gets up my nose big time. In the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the game, they shake hands with the other players. They shake hands with the referee, and the game, the game has no sooner started, and they're at each other's throat. Keith, you're back. Great.
Yeah, sorry about
that. Comment there. Don says, I know I'm splitting hairs here, but sometimes a player can touch the back of an opponent with long hair, not pulling it, but rather the player claims a hair pull anyway. Which player should get the yellow card? The one who feigned a hair pull or the innocent player?
I'll tell you what, that's a great question. A great question, Dan. Because I think on the day, this is why I think it's important when you've got a group of professional referees, you have them in a group, just like, members of the Referees Association have their monthly meetings. These are the things that you discuss. And these are the things that, you get your older referees to offer their advice. My view is that where a player is feigning the fact that he's had his hair pulled, that is an act of simulation to deceive the referee. That is a yellow card offence. Now, I think what we've got to understand is that guidelines need to be drawn by the PGMOL or the IFAB that actually say what constitutes a red card for a hair pull. Is it contact? Or if we're saying it's violent conduct, we go back to that basic law of what I read out. That is that aspect of violent conduct is when a player uses or attempts to use excessive force or brutality.
Yeah.
I've not seen in any of these incidents where red cards have been issued today here any form of brutality. I've not seen the head of the player who's had his hair pulled, as they might say, coming back in a violent manner, finishing up on his backside. And I do think that, they get a touch or a feel in the penalty area, they go down. Sadly, the modern player wants to fall to ground to deceive the referee. And this is why I think, one, we've got professional refereeing here in England to enhance and train and inform and prepare them, where you get that consensus, this is what we're going to do in this particular incident. Now, if they have determined that any contact with the air is going to be classed as violent conduct, I think a red card applies in that situation. If I'm a club official, I'm going to look at the law and we're going to say it's not violent conduct, and I'm going to appeal that red card with a strong chance of winning.
So another one here from Brian, Brian Wexler, he's a regular. He said, I think if you can't use your hands to score, then you shouldn't be ruled offside with your hand.
Right. Well,
Brian, that's a good
one. Well, if I'm on the ones that we see, right, they're not penalising the hand and arm to the underside of the armpit if it's in an offside position. What they are penalising is the law says on handball, underside of the armpit, the shoulder. So what they are doing, when you look at the replays that I've seen, they're almost putting a red marker on the shoulder, right? And that is the area that they're saying is offside. I've got to tell you, in over 50 years of refereeing, I cannot ever remember a player in the games that I've officiated scoring a goal with his shoulder. I've just not seen it.
Yeah.
And therefore, the offside law's got to change, just like the handball's got to change. The handball law is a...
What do you think, Keith? What do you think getting rid of offside entirely?
Well, what I had was in the North American Soccer League, they extended the penalty area to the touchline, and they said you could only be in offside position in that situation. You know, in the past, you and I, if we were running the line or refereeing, running the line in particular, a player would be offside if there was only the goalkeeper and himself. Now what you've got is you've got deliberate play, you've got active play, you've got interference with play, and then all you're doing is, it's great making those decisions sat around the table and making those laws and going, right, okay, fine. In a game of 90 minutes where referees have got to make instant calls with VAR, if they've got VAR, and interestingly, the EFL this week said, we're not having VAR. We're not having VAR live. So that shows the confidence of the majority of professional clubs have in the VAR system. The 20 Premier League teams stick with VAR, and all we get week in, week out. I mean, a few weeks ago, the statistics, I think, that came out of the PGMOL or Premier League said, we're okay. We've only made 50 errors season today.
Not all.
And VAR calls, and I go, crikey, that's handball, that's penalty kicks.
Oh my God.
And I think that is an unacceptable figure.
I got one here from Tommy Breen. He's a regular contributor. Listen to you guys each week, and it is very enjoyable. Thank you, Tommy. Every week it's VAR. Players taking an age to take a throw-in, keepers with kickouts, players faking injury, referees afraid to make big decisions. When are the Premier League officials going to take full action and bring the game back to what we want to watch?
Oh, great question. I have said on numerous occasions, being in the seat at the PGMOL, which I occupied for a number of years, and yes, I brought in goal line technology and I brought in the communication kits to aid referees. But I also had a level of accountability. Referees are human, and they have peaks and troughs in terms of performance levels. It's easy to lose confidence. And with that, concentration. It's about leadership. It's about direction. And without leadership, and look, Howard Webb's in charge. I think he took over when Mike Riley, putting it mildly, made a mess of it. He's now, as I understand it, made little impression in Northern Ireland. He's now director of refereeing in Japan. So these guys get these roles. I just think Howard's got to be more forceful with his referees.
Well, the only reason Mike Riley is in Northern Ireland is because Northern Ireland, with Wales, Scotland, and England, are 4 of the IFAB committee, and he's only there so he can sit on the IFAB committee. Yeah. And as soon as that falls away, he'll be off somewhere else.
Well, he made a mess in England, in my opinion. I took it to a level. I'm not crowing about it. People said that. Managers still complain. Players still complain. The media still said we got it wrong. But, we in a season, we might make about 20 errors.
Yeah.
Out of 380 games and 60 odd FA Cup games. Now, I still can't get over the Michael Salisbury and that handball at Everton.
Yeah.
I forgive in the Manchester United game the is it a goal? Is it not a goal with the use of the hand and arm? I can understand that. I'm a referee. You can only act on what you see.
Of course.
You can't guess.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to guess to some degree because I'm sat in a chair. Yeah. But I think the lack of leadership and direction is a major problem. And I think we've got some referees in the group who are not good enough. I think we're fortunate. We've got some young referees, Thomas Kirk, I think Farah Halam,
Yeah.
Lewis Smith, who are clearly very good at championship level. They need to be given a chance. They need to be brought in. But the one thing that is the key here is, I have to tell you, I think the coaching, the PGMOL did away with assessors. They no longer have assessors. They call the odd guys coaches, and they sit around a table and all that goes with it.
Yeah.
Why do you go off a world standard? FIFA have assessors, UEFA have assessors, or referee observers as they're called, and the PGMOL have drifted away from that. And therefore, to some degree, we've got referees doing their own thing. We're promoting, at times, weak referee. And those weak referees go out and perform poorly, and the following week they get another game.
Thanks, Keith. We have to leave it there. We're way over the time. And apologies to you guys watching, because we did start late. I'll bet you thought we weren't going to start at all. But entirely my fault. I just messed it up completely. But we'll do it all again next week. Thanks very much to Keith. Thanks to Don and to Brian and to Tommy for making their comments. Much appreciated. And for you, the rest of you who didn't make any comments, that's all right. But thank you for watching. We'll do it all again next Monday, same time, 8 o'clock. Until then, good night, and thank you for watching. Good night, Keith.
Good night.